Welcome back, everyone. Here we are. It is hard to believe we are here on Sunday, October 27th, 2024, and we are here at Unit 5, Lesson 20. I'm here with my esteemed panelists tonight, Karen Elkins, John Bonzel, and Jim Porter. Ken Pearson is recovering from hip surgery there in LA, so please send him good wishes as we miss having him. And Jackie is listening in with us tonight. So we have a good conversation here ahead of us, but before we begin, why don't we just take just a simple moment to just recalibrate. Maybe you haven't thought about the ocean in a while, but if you'll just tune in to the ocean sounds, do remember that we have this 24-hour channel on the Awaken Show. This was actually by John Bonzel.
Yes, look at that.
So know that that's a way for you to just tune in. So if you would, for just a moment, get yourself settled in your seat. You may want to close your eyes. Breathe in deeply. And just find yourself tuned into the universal heartbeat of the ocean. Taking some deep breaths in and out. Center yourself on something that you love. Someone, something. Maybe it's loving being on the beach on a bright sunny day, or enjoying a gorgeous sunset. But if you would, just find yourself grounded here in this moment, connecting right here to everyone who is with us on this broadcast, here and in the future, knowing you are exactly where you are meant to be. And when you are ready, feel free to open your eyes. What a gorgeous shot, John, truly. Every time I see that, it just surely shows you the how spectacular nature and the Creator are.
Yes.
Where were you when you took that one, John?
Virginia Beach.
Virginia Beach.
On my birthday, God gave me a wonderful sunrise on my birthday.
There you go. Now we have it memorialized forever. So let's take a look at where we are. So for everyone who's been following us, if you are brand new, know that you have all the videos to go back to, but we are here on Unit 5 and we are on Lesson 20, which means we are inching our way to halfway through the home study course, and that is an exciting thing. And so welcome to everyone who is with us tonight and in the future. So just a reminder for everyone, why do we do this? Okay. And this whole idea of awaken your inner genius was actually inspired by this quote, where mediocrity is self-inflicted and genius is self-bestowed. And so our team got together and we focus on the man who tapped the secrets of the universe that you'll see pictured there, a great on-ramp. And John, you love this next quote. I'm going to ask you to please share it again, because this is what you told me when I first met you.
If you can read and count to 9, you can master the secrets of the universe. And it is that simple. Now, you can overcomplicate things, but simplicity is best.
There you go. And so what we do as this group is we focus on the home study course, as you'll see there. So when there's so many things, so many works in the Russell with Walter and Lara Russell that sometimes you can get lost. There's so much and it's very rich. You could spend your whole life studying it. And for a moment there, though, we wanted to spend this home study course. That's what we're doing, is following the blueprint that they gave us of 1 lesson a week, 1 unit per month. And so we've been at this for a while. We are certainly an ambitious thing. So I wanted to pause for a moment and go back to some thoughts from our last session before we dive into this particular lesson. And you actually, Jim, you mentioned a story at the last session about John and the Christ of the Blue Ridge. And John, I went back and found this picture of you and wanted to memorialize that, because Jim, that is what you were talking about, right?
That is what I was talking about.
So wanted everybody to have that and have an idea of that and the size of John. And so one of the things that John first told me about, John, I wanted to give you a lot of credit here, because I was a bit full of gratitude and a bit melancholy as I was thinking about when we first met. You know, when you and I first did the first Russell experience, this is how I began the Russell experience. And I showed everyone these numbers. I said, what do these numbers mean? As you'll take a look there on the screen, 7, 64, 11, and 9. And I had everybody guess that. And then I finally revealed what you all had shared with me, that these were 7 dedicated Russell students moved an approximate 64 tons of materials, equating to 11 semi-trailers from the warehouse in Cremora, Virginia, to the new location on 518 West Main Street in only 9 days. And wanted to show just a quick picture of the crew. We have a lot of gratitude here. And Jim, you were part of this, even though you weren't in the picture. So I wanted to be sure and give you credit. I only had one picture. You'll send me some others. But right now I wanted to focus on John, because John, something you said to me very early in the Russell experience was this, as you and I were planning this, as you'll see on the next page. You shared with me about your goal, and that was to ensure that the Russell's teachings are preserved as written for future generations. And that vision continues today. Fair?
Yes.
And so John was the reason that I actually was introduced to the teachings. And so I wanted just to remind everyone right quick that that panel you see on your screen have all spoken at the USP. And so as you'll see on the next slide there's a couple of videos I want to recommend to you all. So I spoke, John, the very first time you had me speak was in 2022. And I will going to drop these links in there. But John, that was when you had COVID. You came down with COVID actually that night. You remember that?
Oh yeah, man. I'll tell you what, I faded like air going out of a balloon. Shoosh.
You barely made it through it, but I did want to mention that it is saved for posterity, and the other presentation I just did in August is coming soon. Robert Edwards Grant spoke at a recent homecoming event, and I wanted to mention that was online, and go to the YouTube channel. But more importantly, I wanted to mention the other videos that our panelists have done. So you will see that Ken and James is going to put all of these links so you won't miss anything. But Ken has a video up there. Karen has a video up there of last year when she spoke at homecoming. And Jim and John also have videos there on the channel. And I wanted to encourage you all, as we go to that next slide, to take a look and maybe even take a screenshot of these videos so that you can follow along. A wealth of information. And so a gracious hello to everyone who is listening. James is going to actually put in the chat box links to them all. So why don't we go ahead and dive in? So I want to say a gracious hello to everyone who is with us here tonight. I want to say hi, Jean. Hello, Tara, Deb, Linda. We have Karen, and we have Bonnie. Hello to everyone. And we have Diane holding everyone close. Doris, so glad that you are all with us. So I wanted to ask you all, as we begin, this particular lesson is about the questions, the Q&A. And would you just remind us, everybody, Jim, why did Leo and Walter, why did they have Q&A as such a part of the home study course? Because that is the last lesson in every unit.
For clarity and direct communication with students. They wanted them to be involved in the home study course by being able to ask questions. I wish you could know the amount of letters that came into Leo when John and I were there. And I'm sure before that, each week, dozens, sometimes hundreds. And she would personally answer every one of them.
You know, that's something really interesting. Even when people come into the museum now, they will still talk about how they received, usually within just a week after Leo met them, a hand letter. I mean, a letter from her, whether it's typed or a hand note. And that must have been a big part of your jobs, John, when you all were there at the palace working with Leo.
Yeah, there was no mass typing out of envelopes, especially the Christmas message. I remember Jim and I don't know how many hundreds, if not thousands, envelopes that we hand addressed, index cards, writing out the names, handwritten. And that's how Leah wanted. She wanted that personal touch.
Well, and just in case you all missed it last week, I do want to just show you. So this was John, and then when he first came across the work with Walter and Leo, these were you guys in your 20s, correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
So I wanted to take just a moment to show you all what we all looked like when we first ran across the Russell's work. So here were John and Jim. Here is Jackie and Jim, also in their 20s. And then here was Ken. Here was Ken when he first found the Russell work. Hold on just a second. When he first found the Russell work, it was shortly, he found it at 27, got married at 29 there. There is Ken. Here is lovely Karen, who, Karen, you found it a little bit later in life, but you were a sprightly young thing here as well.
I was
Sprightly young, yes, dear.
No, I
Gorgeous.
was trying to think. I was probably about 45 when I.
And I was the oldest, older because I was right there before we met, right there close to in my heading around right those early 50s. So I was either late to the party or y'all were late to the party. I don't know which one that was. So we'll have to see, right? But John, I just wanted to go back for a moment there because when you were talking about the Christmas message, we're going to dive into this lesson. Could you share with everybody what happened at Christmas when you all, I heard so many stories of how you actually worked on all of those handwritten letters that Leo did every year.
Yeah, well, it was very time consuming, and it was one of those times that I got my butt chewed by a 360 Illuminate too, because I told Leo that she couldn't address envelopes faster than I could, and we had it out.
And who won?
What did that look like?
Well, I had to kind of cave in because she just presented a better case than I did. Okay.
There you go. There you go. So as we go into this questions and answers, I think it's important for us all to remember just how special this is. And they actually pulled out the important questions for each one of the chapters, each one of the units. And so why don't we go ahead and dive into the very first one? This is if we can go. And Jim, if you would just read that first paragraph, please.
All right, let me enlarge the screen so these eyes can see it. There we go. It is indeed most gratifying to find that students are learning that all questions are answerable in the light of their own inner knowing. The fact that all knowledge exists and that it is omnipresent and available to all for the asking or desiring is fast being discovered by those of you who have become most proficient in the art of meditating. There it is again. Beautiful, beautiful meditating.
So we want to pause for a moment. And what we're hoping is that as we continue through this course, that many of you will come back to us with questions. And so we're hoping Christy and Linda and some of the rest of you who are joining us, we're hoping that you're going to come back with questions. I love what Tara has to say there when she was responding to the handwritten notes. Tara said this: they were ahead of their time, to say the least. Personalized communication. Tara, there's a lot to be appreciated about that. And I found it very special that they actually included Q&A from students here in this. And so as we go through this, Jim, I'm curious about this. When they go on to that next paragraph, they said there's also another cause for gratification in the increasing comprehension of what meditation means. And so can you go over that next sentence or two so that we can recalibrate everybody on this idea of meditation? More and more and more people are talking about it.
Meditation is not for the purpose of acquiring a state of bliss or of divine ecstasy. Its purpose is to transform one from a condition which creation is to the condition which creation is not. When one acquires that state of universal stillness by overwhelming his senses.
By overcoming.
Thank you. By overcoming his senses.
It does overwhelm me at times.
He is in the creative state. He becomes one with the Creator. The ecstasy or bliss of that condition is not sensual, although unfortunately many students interpret the idea of bliss as a condition of the senses. We were just speaking about this before we came on air, where Karen was doing work for 2 days producing the piece that she has tonight. And it became a timeless thing for her. She just went into that genius mode and was able to work without fatigue, communing directly with Source. And that's a perfect example of it.
It was so much fun.
Now I have to tell you, when Karen calls me either late at night or I can tell when this woman is on fire. And so being that she's on the West Coast and I'm on the East Coast, I absolutely, and when she and I are working together on things, it is truly like time just goes whoop, and you just go into that space. And I've heard you all mention that as well. So John, if you could, if you'll read the two sentences in the yellow brackets there and remind everybody about this issue about meditation, please.
True meditation transforms one to a state of mental bliss, which only the creative genius knows. The more you can comprehend that, the more that you can conquer your senses by stopping the action of your thinking to become still and know. And I'll give you a personal example of that.
Please.
Is that, when I was working on some of the artwork, and Jim accompanied me as well sometimes, and we would work for hours and hours on end,
For several days in a row, we would do that without fatigue. He doesn't realize he's blocked yet.
All right. So keep going, John. Keep going, Jim.
Well, one example that he's probably leading up to is there was one point where the electric went out, and the basement of the university has no windows. So it went to instant blackness. Rather than packing up and going home, we decided we would stay there. We found a lamp. We were able to plug it in, not plug it in, a light that ran on batteries. We were able to hook it up. And we sat there the rest of the night until the sun came up and the lights came back on.
Wow.
Working on statuary. We just loved it so much. He's back.
Jim picked up right where you left off. So is there anything you want to add?
I will say this, that as long as I've known Jim, that one time we were working there at the museum, it was the absolute happiest I've ever seen Jim Border. He was in absolute bliss. He really was.
I was. Yeah.
Well, and I want to bring up Linda's comment here because this is very poignant to our conversation here tonight. And she said, I reviewed the lessons on meditation last night. And each time I read them, I get a deeper understanding. And that's really what the purpose of the home study course is. So it's for each one of us to be able to get a deeper understanding each time that we go through this. And so if we'll go back to that particular page 386, and there were a few things I wanted to bring up in the blue. So it says no decision, up a little bit, James. It says no decision of man should ever come from his senses. So can we stop for a moment there? I thought that was a pretty important sentence. So John, I know you tell me that Walter and Leo underlined or put into all caps the most important things out of the home study course. But as a newer student, every once in a while, there's a sentence that comes out. And I thought that one was very intriguing and wanted to ask the panel about this if we go back to the panel. And what does a life look like when you're making decisions that are not coming from your senses?
Is that a general question to all of us?
Question to the panel, yes. So someone's listening to this work and saying, what do you mean I make decisions without depending on your senses?
It's not responding to your sense desires and becoming so focused on what you're doing that you lose all sense of self and you become a much greater presence. Fatigue, as Karen pointed out, does not set in. You can just run and run for hours and hours. You don't think about food. You don't think about drink. You just keep on doing what you're doing. And if it is presented to you, you might casually take a drink and put it down. It's not something that you focus on. It's the closest thing to, I used to run when I was a young man, long distance, and I ran several times a week. And there's a thing that we call a runner's high where your endorphins kick in and you're just in a blissful state and you can run seemingly forever. That is the closest thing I've ever experienced physically to what you feel when you're in that bliss of just doing work for the sheer love of it.
I love that. And then we also have two comments here, and then I'll come to Karen. Deb says this. She says that sentence's meaning is listening to your inner promptings. That was one comment. And then Bonnie said your decision should come from your knowing. And so I'm along the lines of Bonnie as well, is that sometimes your senses say do this, but then your knowing says something else. Karen, you have a thought?
Yeah, I think that's where I was kind of heading with that one, because your senses are your response, your electrical charge wired in your brain that's always going to react and repeat, as opposed to if you sit still for a second and ask yourself, is that really what you want? I mean, just because you sense that's in its reaction doesn't mean it's correct.
Well, when you think about it, there are many people who have stories that say, it looked like I should go. It looked like the weather was clear, or there were no cars, coming my way, but something just told me not to do it. I just had an inner knowing. And so you will hear people with stories that will say, I just listened to them. I didn't get on that plane. I didn't cross the intersection at that time. Or I called somebody when they needed to. So there are many instances that we actually do make decisions based on our knowing instead of our senses. John, anything you want to add before we continue?
Yeah, I was visiting Jim and Jackie one day earlier in the week, and it was approaching nighttime, and I was 5 minutes down the road, and God told me to slow down.
And we lost him again. The internet must
We
have
slowed down again.
He's beyond slowed down.
Well, sometimes the internet doesn't work, but I'm sure he's telling a story about slowing down. He'll come back to that. But I think many of us have instances where that has happened, or we'll just be told not to do something. Jim?
And you become more and more prompt from the inner divine. The more you listen to it. Otherwise, the more you don't ignore it and respond to it, the more clear it becomes. And then you'll find yourself going through entire days where you simply are in communion with Source. It's a wonderful experience.
All right, John, we're waiting with bated breath. What happened after you were told not to, what did God say to you?
To slow down, that there would be deer in the highway. And it was 2 different instances, and I slowed down both times. I was able to see them in the distance, and I could have just kept my speed up, not paid attention to that thought. But you just have to pay attention sometimes.
Yes.
To that inner voice. It'll guide you always.
Well, and as we go on to this next comment, it's also underlined in blue, and it says this. It says, you think inwardly. The more you think inwardly, okay, the more you will find that God thinks with you by sending his messages to you in timeless light flashes, which we call inspiration. Inspired knowledge is cosmic knowledge. And I felt it was important for us to stop. And let me read one more sentence, because this is an important concept. I'd like, Jim, I'm going to come to you to talk about that timeless light and flashes. John, I'm going to come to you about that inspired knowledge and cosmic knowledge. And Karen, I'm going to start with you with this next comment. That is why geniuses bring ideas into the world which were never before known in the world. And so when you go on to the sentence right after that, it's talking about that is why a Beethoven can think with God and interpret God's rhythmic thinking. That is why you can suddenly know something which you have never known before. And Karen, you find that happening even with you before I go to Jim to talk about timeless light flashes.
Yeah, I when I do the magazine and stuff like that, or whatever I'm doing, it's like teamwork. And totally being in rhythm with it, and you listen and you're guided, and you always get the next thing. And the next thing that you're supposed to kind of glue together, put the puzzle pieces together, it guides you. Because that's, yeah. I do like the idea, though, that it was never known before. Some of the stuff I can't say for me that it's that way particularly, but I do like the fact that the genius come up with the innovative ideas. I think for my contribution, it's always finding the threads where things go together and I integrate. So I'm more an integrative thinker.
Yes. There's more to say there, but Jim, talk a little bit about this idea of timeless light flashes.
When they come, and they come to all of us, it's complete and whole instantaneously. If it's an event that you are being guided toward, or a distance that you have to travel to get there, it's complete and whole timelessly, literally timelessly. You don't have to question it. And the more that happens to you, the more you don't question it. You just do.
Right. And John, I have a comment after you talk about cosmic knowledge a bit, but I thought that was very profound when they said inspired knowledge is cosmic knowledge. What does that mean? Cosmic knowledge.
Cosmic means it's directly from God versus you reading it out of a book or listening to a radio broadcast or something of your outer senses. Cosmic knowledge is your inner senses. That's as simple as I could put it.
There's a question, though, John. The one word that comes to me is truth. That when it's cosmic knowledge, it's truth.
Yeah, you don't, like Jim said, you don't have to question it. You don't have to decipher it or analyze it. Just go with it.
You go with it, and I'm going to add an and to that. So I think many times when you first start having timeless light flashes, when you are unaware of how this all works, then sometimes it can frighten you because you can't explain to someone. They say, how do you know? And you say, I just know. You know, we're coming from a school system that taught us to show our mathematical work when we managed an equation, right? So the more you become used to and invite in these timeless light flashes, I find the easier it becomes. And for Jim, for me, many times it's like we're used to knowledge coming to us in a very linear way, 1, 2, 3, or the cow jumped over the moon. And in fact, for me, these timeless light flashes are like someone handing me sometimes a book like War and Peace, or sometimes just like a small book, but the knowing comes so quickly that there's not a linear way to see it, has been my experience.
Yeah, and the people that struggle with, I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
Now, I was going to say, always remember this. There's your timing, there's my timing, and then there's God's timing. And those flashes of light and that inspiration will come in God's timing. So you just have to be in receivership of it. Yes.
Jim?
We are in the habit of listening to sensed body habits. Because we're used to doing that, we've built a momentum up to respond to sensual thoughts and desires, and we're not listening clearly to universal cosmic input. It's always present. The more you learn to set aside the sensual thoughts and desires and walk away from the body self to the universal you, the more that communication becomes clear. And sometimes it's profoundly clear and complete. I don't know if I've mentioned here before, I was literally set up in bed one night many years ago, and a literal voice in my head said, send your son $400. And I turned around. I knew that was straight from source. And I turned to my wife. I said, we got to send 400. This was like 3 a.m. I said, we've got to send $400 to Nathan. He was out in Oregon traveling. So she showed me how to do it on
online.
Yeah, well, it wasn't online, but one of those things. You just a bank transfer thing, and so that he could go to any bank and pick it up. Wells Fargo, a Wells Fargo thing. And we called him and got a hold of him and told him where to go pick it. And the next day he called us back to keep it short, and he said, "How did you know?" He said, "I was down to almost less than a quarter tank of gas. I had no money, and I was still a day and a half from home." And I told him because God told me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I completely agree about that. And I'll share with you something that was that happened even to me this week since our last broadcast. So Jackie says this. Jackie says that sometimes our decisions are made by the senses lean towards logic. Our intuitive decision leaves it open to trust and uncertainty. That's certainly something for us to remember. And Bonnie says, when you are in a space where you realize that I and the Father are one. A profound realization, Bonnie. Something that was very, very powerful for me. And I want to acknowledge Tara's vulnerability. So Tara, I really appreciate you saying this, and you said this. I get super discouraged after trying to share this knowledge. And have been out of the game, so to speak, for years, pretty depressed for a while. This is me getting back on track. We say a big heart, and thank you very much for sharing that, Tara, because I do think that many of us are inspired to do these things. And so for me, I find that timeless light flashes build on top of each other. So after our session last week, our conversation was so robust and so meaningful to me that I actually then had additional timeless light flashes throughout the week of taking what I had heard and it building onto it. And I was shown many, many things. And I was inspired to even do a Facebook Live post today. And because I heard this morning, they said, do it today. Stop waiting now. So I was like, okay, do it. We tend to wait until we have something perfect, or we tend to wait until we have more logic and more understanding. And sometimes we are simply inspired to do what it is that we need to do. So a lot more for us to talk about here, but it is time for our first break. What we do, for those of you that are new, is we take a quick 3-minute break at each half hour. So that way you can get some oxygen, move, go take water, and hopefully we'll have some music and an inspiring quote on the screen. We'll see you in 3. All right, you're within earshot. Well, find your way back. Find your way back. So we're giving you a sneak peek of some of the things that we're working with. In the studio here, I have an office and studio at the Russell Museum, and someday we're going to have a Vibe smart board right here. So John, I keep trying to manifest a Vibe smart board so that we can draw and do all of the fun things we do. You know, when you and I first worked on the first Russell experience, I had a wish list of someday having a grand piano in the museum, and then somehow that showed up, didn't it? You're on mute. So I'm hoping someday that maybe we'll have a magical existence of a Vibe smart board, so we can have all of the diagrams here and be able to write a lot of things. So surely we have that power, don't we, John?
Yes, we do.
So let's manifest that, shall we? I'm hoping, you know, as we get into some of the science, we're working really hard for all of you watching. We're working really hard to make this as easily understanding and accessible as possible. So Margie says this before we begin. She said, I needed this going back and forth between logic and the spiritual side. Very, very true. Very, very true. And I think that's really the journey for all of us, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, Kimberly, if I could just share 2 words with everyone. What we're talking about is the difference between sensing and knowing. And they can happen simultaneously, and you have to decide or know where you are any given moment, you know, in the day. Do I spend more time sensing, or do I spend more time knowing, or what state am I in? and that helps people.
You know, that's an interesting
Sensing versus knowing.
That's an interesting thought, John. What if we did? Tara is offering to help us with some AI tools and help us create faster. Thank you, thank you, Tara. Karen's been helping us too, so feel free to send us an email. James will pop that in the chat box. But John, that's very interesting. What if we all did get into a habit of each night asking ourselves, what percentage of my day did I spend knowing versus sensing?
Absolutely.
It'd be interesting. Let's just do that between now and next week. Can we make a little deal here with the panel and everyone who's listening tonight? At the end of each day, ask yourself, were you around 50-50? Were you 70-30? Where were you? Were you all game for a little test here?
Yeah,
Sure.
I think that'd be an interesting question because I know I certainly have gone more towards the knowing, and sometimes I can't even explain to others how it is that I simply know things, but I simply do. So I love that sensing versus knowing, and so let us know if you are game for that kind of a just check for yourself, everyone. So glad to have you here with us.
Yeah, you can get in the habit, Kim, of working to be conscious that you are consciousness, that you are universal consciousness, because your body knows your habits. You can get up in the morning conscious that you are universal consciousness, thinking or knowing in that sense, that's what you are, and just let your body go through the routine. Get out of bed, go in, do your stuff in the bathroom, take your shower. The body knows how to do that. You don't have to dwell on what you're doing. It knows. In fact, you actually drop things and make less mistakes when you let it do what it knows how to do, and you go about the business of communing with your universal self.
All right, well, that goes right into where we're going next on top of page 387 here. It talks about this. It said every student in the highlighted section, as we scroll down, every student is desirous of attaining cosmic consciousness. So it's important for everybody to really get in tune with that phrase, cosmic consciousness. Notice that they're both capitalized. Both of those words are capitalized. There is no more effective way to acquire the state of creative power through omniscient knowing than in acquiring the habit of inner thinking with intervals of long or short periods in between, which means meditative decentration and flashes while in conversation with people or in long periods alone. All right, so gentlemen, if you would dive into that word decentration. So this is one of the first times it shows up in this kind of phrase, and this is going to be an important Russell concept as we move forward. What does it mean?
Are we talking about decentration? Is that what you said?
Decentration.
Yes. Well, it's simply you stop thinking. Just let your mind go. It's that simple. Don't overcomplicate it. You know, just a state of stillness. Try to hold it.
Don't overcomplicate it. John, I need to tell you how old I was when I first learned that space. I was in my late 30s. So it's not as simple. I spent my whole life, and I remember the first time I was at hot yoga, I was so dead that I couldn't barely function through the class. And there was a moment where there was nothing. There was stillness. And I was like, oh my heavens, that was glorious. Where did that go? Where did all my thoughts go? It was all the chatter that had just been taunting me disappeared. So I know you, having studied this for 50 years, it seems simple, but I want to honor those who are new to the journey listening to this in the future. I did not learn that idea of decentration until very late.
Now remember, even though we're studying the home study course, the principle of decentration, of finding and seeking stillness and quiet, you know, is just, that's an everyday thing for some people, and some people never experience it.
Mm-hmm. True. And when Ken and I have too much going on and we both need a break, we're like, we're going to decentrate. I'll see you. I'll see you later. I'll see you later. All right, so lovely words. So everybody make a note. So I want to say hello to all of our TikTok viewers, all of our live stream in the Facebook, and also in our YouTube viewers. So glad to have you all back. So let's go ahead into the first question and answer. Karen, I'm going to ask for your help with this one. And it says this. The question is this. What relation to creative thinking is reasoning? And can you just read that sentence, that first sentence, please?
Yeah, reasoning is not creative thinking. Reasoning is a process of assembling memories or fact of motion. which has been observed by the senses and recorded by the brain to produce another effect by a different manner of assembling them. In the search laboratory, for example, the experiment reasoned that if 5 effects are reassembled in a different proportion or another effect added to those 5, a different effect will be produced.
All right, so John, keep going, because I think this is important, because they go on and they talk about a musician, a composer who creates. So if you would.
I'm going to ask James just to back up a little bit.
All right.
Right. So think about it. So here's what we're doing. Reasoning. Reasoning is what is taking place by the mind. Right?
Okay.
All right. Now, hang on here just one moment. I want to get. All right. All right. I got that backwards. I beg your pardon. Yeah. So reasoning is of the senses. Remember, we were talking about sensing and knowing?
Yes.
So reasoning is of the sensing. So it's just your mind, your brain just taking information, assembling it, processing it, and coming up with a solution. And like they said, you add in another effect, and then you're going to end up with another solution. And it's just, that's how it works, right? And I think what they're doing is they're leading us to how the creator does it, how the creator talks to us.
Yes, and let's talk about that, because if we scroll down to where I have the highlighted yellow circle, it says this. It says creations are always inspired. They are never reasoned. Creations are always inspired. They are never reasoned. And so let's go to the panel for a moment, James, because, being that I had published one book already called Your Lion Inside, I would have people reach out to me and say, hey, Kim, can you give me some advice about a book? And people will send me their books to read. And there's always a massive difference between those that are inspired and those that were reasoned. And one of my 2 pieces of advice when I'm giving someone who wants to write a book is to go into relationship with the book, because the book is a creation wanting to be birthed. That was issue number 1. And don't write it in a linear fashion. Allow it to be inspired, because that's what I learned. Unfortunately or fortunately, all of my inspiration came in the middle of the night. I got to the point where I had to leave blank paper on the dining room table, because sure enough, at 3 a.m., that's when God, source would be talking to me, and that's when all the inspiration would come. But it is such a difference in the books that are inspired versus created. Karen, do you find this difference in your work as well?
I was woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning with the sounding voice saying you're going to do a book, and I'm going, really? Okay, this dyslexic child's going to do one. So, and I did. It took me a while, but it has mostly pictures. But it has also 60 scientists in it, and it's all about the creation of the universe, which was my question as a kid. How does God create? So this is not like a storybook. It'll take you through unwinding how the universe creates. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, this is really, and that's part of what those of you that go to the Science Sage website. So Karen, feel free to put that in there. But Karen does a masterful job. You can see her inspiration. And John, that was one of the things that when you first showed me her magazine about Walter Russell, I was so deeply touched. This was what was online that I actually reached out to her and said, Karen, can we actually print what you put together? Because John, you were like, she has done an amazing job of integrating so many of these concepts.
Yes. Beautifully done, Karen. I remember our phone call together, and I asked her a favor. I said, is there any way you could plug the home study course for us? And she did. She did a little bit more than that too. So thank you again, Karen.
It's always fun when you love it.
Well, and Karen, I have to tell you, I reread across this. If you would put the link to this specific edition as well, but we read across this and just look at the beautiful poetry in motion. I'm going to put this under here as well so you all can see it. But let me zoom out just a minute here. But what she did was, it was so poetic. That's what just struck me about as I was watching her. You gave me an understanding, and you helped me actually. I don't know if I've ever said this to you, Karen, but you actually gave me inspiration when I was doing and creating the Russell experience. as I saw you integrate, and then that's how we've come down this long journey to be able to be here. So I think that's really, really important. So let's go on to the next question to be mindful of our time here today. It says, can one learn, this is over here on page bottom of 388, can one learn how to be an artist by copying pictures of great artists? I am told that it's better for me to try to draw simple objects that I see around me. But I should think that if I copy masterpieces, I could become a greater artist than just copying simple objects or people or landscapes. So John, you'll see what I highlighted there. They of course go into the answer saying you're quite wrong, but let's go to the yellow highlighted sentence. And if you would read that for us, because that was ultimately the answer.
Absolutely. It says, in order for you to interpret nature, you must know nature itself, its very soul. And the only way to know it is to be it, become one with it by talking to it, interpreting it, and living it. And that's a great statement here, Kimberly. You know, we've reached the halfway point in the home study course. And the Russells are trying to have you think that you are the part of the Creator. You're not separate from and apart. You are one with the Creator. And when you give yourself a chance to embrace that thought and accept it, not challenge it, and know it, it is amazing how you start looking at nature differently.
Yes.
And you feel that bonding take place. It's a wonderful thing.
When I ran across this Russell work, that was what happened to me, is that all of a sudden I saw nature in a much more magical way. And I saw all of a sudden, when you understood the scientific principles, that Karen, okay, is the one who actually got me understanding at a pictorial level, because, you know, the Russells had the words, and then Karen was adding another layer, which I think that was, Jim, wasn't that really what Leah was about, is having all students go out and continue to birth their interpretation of what it is that they did, so that the message would.
Yes. She had no problem with people, nor did Dr. Russell, with people writing books about the material, not parroting and repeating it, but writing books about their understanding of it, and then giving them credit for having led them in that direction.
Yes.
If you remember, when Dr. Russell released the Universal One, I believe it was his personal banker, John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, read the book, and he literally quit his job, retired, and spent 7 years writing his own book, interpreting what he got from the Universal One, which Dr. Russell embraced.
Wow.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Changed his life. Yeah.
Changed his life. Yeah.
Kimberly, I'll give you another example.
Please.
My Karen has family in for the weekends, and they were going to bike ride on the Skyline Drive, you know, because the fall foliage and the beauty and so on. And then they hiked as well. So they did a bike ride one day, they hiked the next, and they take pictures. So they're inside this wonderment and this beauty, but they don't acknowledge the Creator. They don't talk about the beauty. They don't talk about any of that. It's just a sensed observation for them. I don't think, I hope I'm wrong in this, but I didn't pick up any like being inspired by it to want to say, oh my God, look at the beauty, you know. And Jim, you know, that sunset you sent me the other day, I looked at my Karen, I said, there's only one entity I know of that can create something this beautiful.
Amen to that.
Well, and you walk through the world of the more magical existence. So let's hear what Bonnie has to say here. She says, I feel closest to the divine when I am creating. When I am creating, it's one of the divine's biggest talents that need to be recognized and be thankful for. Bonnie, you're totally right about that. I'm so glad you're enjoying that. And we also have a comment from Tara. If you'll take a look here, and she says this, so I wish everyone could see nature through that lens. It is truly a beautiful, miraculous world we live in. I am thankful. I desire to know. Wow. And look, she capitalized no. So I want to encourage everyone, the next time you're on a walk, notice the shape of ivy. So as I was walking the other day, I noticed that the way ivy hangs, it literally is a heart shape. And as I was walking past it, I could actually feel the message saying, there's love all around. You all have been missing it. So literally, when you walk past ivy, see where it grows, see where it crawls. And when you begin to recognize that those little ivy leaves are literally like heart shapes, you begin to see love everywhere in the universe. And wouldn't that be?
I think that's what happened to Jim the other day, Kimberly. He walked past this place that had ivy, and he went ahead and got that love shirt.
Oh, look at him, inspired by love. That's actually one of our T-shirts.
It is one of your T-shirts.
It is one of our T-shirts. And when we reach a certain number of subscribers here on the YouTube channel and a certain number of watch hours, we're going to be able to start selling those T-shirts online. So everybody keep it coming our way. And Rita says this, one more comment before we go back to the home study course, because this is our journey here together. Rita says this. Can you read that for me, Jim?
I read that George Washington Carver discovered all of the many uses for peanuts by holding a peanut in his hand and asking it to reveal its secrets. I knew that he discovered many ways to use it, but that's new to me. That's wonderful, and that's a perfect example of what we're talking about. And we, John and I am going to assume Karen and Kim, we daily commune openly with nature. I have been caught talking to trees and flowers in the very sky above, having conversations. And, some certain more body-oriented people would think that I'm a crazy man, but.
Well, no, I mean, if you find it interesting, Karen, when you actually listen to the stories of many scientists, they are actually famous stories about them either falling asleep and having a dream, having an apple hit them on the head. I mean, we have all of these scientists that have been inspired by nature that they've actually been tapping into this cosmic consciousness, and they didn't have a word or phrase for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Most of them that I've written about or even hosted all know very clearly where it comes from. They were all very much God-men. And so that's really where they got their source.
Do you see that awareness changing, Karen, in your lifetime?
I saw the last conference at Tesla Tech, since I helped did the whole book. There wasn't probably, out of the 28 speakers, the abstracts that came in had God quotes, it was point blank all over the place. And when I go to conferences and I'm in the back room with the guys or having a beer or something at the end, they're all showing us stuff that relates to that. That is really at the heart and soul of them. So I see that is like almost 90%.
Well, but you're saying from Tesla Tech, these are scientists that are actually outside of the system a little bit. So
yeah, well, that and when I've gone to water conferences and other things like that, but maybe I go to things that are much more conscious related. So I don't know.
You do.
But, yeah.
So I bet that gives me great hope. I think that's incredible. Yeah. So let's go ahead down here. I found it very interesting how practical they were. So I want to bring your attention to the question at the bottom of 389. And they actually said, I'm a professional tennis player. Since studying your course, I find that I'm playing a better game. And I feel that the course is the cause of it. I cannot tell you why, but I feel it. And so they go on and then he says, can you explain that? And John, if you could just pull out a few nuggets from the answer there, because I think it actually would tie into what you would talk about with your golf as well.
Well, I remember I was a soccer player in high school and college. And then I spent 2 years at Swannanoa. And then I went back home and I got involved in a pick-me-up game. And my agility and my movements were so incredible. People would stop me, my buds, and they would say, man, what do you want? I need to get some of that. And it was difficult to explain to them that, it's just the godlike being inspired. And so when you are in rhythm with that natural flow, that 1-2, everything moves beautifully and in accordance with it.
Yeah. Well, and they were talking about that in the answer. They said that it's very clearly the result of increased inner sensory perception or the inner vision, which many students of the course experience. So that's part of why we encourage you all to get a copy of your own home study course. You're gradually learning what effect you are creating when you strike the ball. And I thought it was very intriguing, those last few sentences. It says, you are gradually learning to decentrate in timeless flashes between your actions and know the geometry of those actions sufficiently to have the knowledge to have that knowledge control your intuition. Great skaters develop that intuitive skill in the same extent, for both have to decide as quickly as they act. So let's talk about that for just a moment, everyone. And I don't have a picture of Walter when he was ice skating, but pause for a moment since they brought up skating. Jim, can you share with everybody who doesn't know this about Walter, what was Walter's relationship to ice skating?
Walter Russell was first introduced to ice skating when he was in Europe for one of his trips. He fell in love with it. He brought it back, figure skating. He brought his love of it back to the United States and skated very often at Rockefeller Center, the ice rink there, and literally introduced figure skating to the United States and helped kick it off. He also won the what was it, national amateur title, I believe it was, at the age of 56. And he was competing against youngsters, and he outshined them all because of exactly what we're talking about. He danced with the ice. It was like a ballet. And when you see the picture of him on skates, and those skates are still at the museum, they're fun to look at. When you see him on ice on skates, well, unfortunately, we have no film of that, but we have pictures of it. You can see he is absolutely in joy and bliss doing what he's doing, and he just shines.
Well, it's important for us all to remember that he lived in a time before this idea that we all get old. I mean, so this notion that we all get an AARP card at 55 and that we ever retire, I mean, to me, that's one of the worst things that happened to our society, because it has put this lens on us that we age and you can't be as good as when you age. And yet that was part of what I found so inspiring about the Walter Russell story, is that he did these things. I mean, his last carving was at 92. He was ice skating, winning a championship at 56. Are you kidding me?
Yes. Yeah, a national championship. Yes.
Dr. Russell,
go ahead, John.
He exemplified the epitome of everything that he ventured into. You know, there was nothing half-assed about what Dr. Russell did. So if you look at his artworks and his writings, his drawings, and him raising and owning Arabian stallions, you know, it's the only purebred horse in the world, you know, and he saw the majesty of them. Oh, look at, there you go. Yes. And and it's something that's within.
Well, and what's deafening is that it can be for all of us, because that's why we're doing this here, Awaken Your Inner Genius. And so when we go down to the bottom of page 389, the question is this, is that I'm one of 5 men who like to climb mountains together. We're all of the same build, same strength and health, and all about the same age. What I can't understand is that 3 of us always go to bed tired, even after only 5 or 6 hours, while the other 2 never feel tired and would never think of going to bed. Can you account for that? And so, John, what's the answer there? Bring up a couple of things that I highlighted, please, because I found that was very interesting in their description, mainly because anyone who's listening to it now, if we can go down to the answer, James, is that anyone who's listening to this, you too have access to this. So, John? We lost John. Jim?
Yeah, we do. And John is a master at putting pure joy and love into everything he does. He works senselessly for hours and hours and hours on end. He works me into the ground. I can't keep up with him. And I'm a good, hard working human being. I love to get out and get involved in things. But his love is so focused in everything he's doing, and he's an absolute joy of the experience of each and everything, that he is tireless.
Well, and so I want to tie into what it is they said here, because I hear this from Karen as well, and I know I've experienced it well. It says, if you study each of the 5 men, you'll find out that 2 of you who are not tired love the sheer sport of it, the out of doors of it, the glory of living, which art personifies, which that art personifies. Such an attitude of mind, notice mind is capitalized, generates an inner joyousness. So if everyone would write down inner joyousness in you, which charges your body in excess of the discharges by fatigue. The other 3 don't get that thrill. They climb the mountain for other reasons other than manifesting the glory of living. And so if we could put that up, James, manifesting the glory of living. And so I want to pause for a moment because this human journey, I think, robs us of that sometime when we're a little lost. We lose our way to manifesting the glory of living. And they say this, they said they do it, but they do not make an art of it. The pleasure of it is superficial, not soul deep. Because of it, their bodies discharge in excess of their charge. And so I love the stories, Jim, of where Walter Russell hated to mow the grass, but whenever he did it, he wanted to find a way to turn it into an art. And so what would he do when he mowed the grass?
He would sculpt pictures of animals and nature and people in the grass with the mower. And he didn't hate it. It was not among his favorite jobs.
Okay.
I don't think the man had the ability to hate.
Okay. I just knew that was one of his least favorite things, is what I had
least
heard.
favorite. Because he found it boring because he was sitting,
Right.
And
well, let's scroll down, James. John's trying to get back on. He's having internet issues, although it is suspiciously close to the start of the game. I'm not going to tell him that. All right. So the same effect is repeated all the way down through all the work and play of all actions of man. The man who loves his work and business or profession is fresh and invigorated at the end of the day, while the one who labors heartily at work, which he does not love, is nervously and physically fatigued at the end of the day. The secret of achievement is to learn how to put love into your every action. So this one really spoke to me because I do love a great deal of my professional corporate work. But every once in a while, I can find myself getting drained from it. And I know it's time for me to end up changing because I found that I could take all that inspiration and that excitement that I used to pour there. But when I come into this museum and I do this work, all this, I mean, I could be here for hours and hours and hours. So very, very powerful. So why don't we go ahead and take our next break just in time as John does come back. John, I won't say anything about the fact that I knew it was close to football time. So I forgive me. I was picking on you. We're glad you're back. We're here to take our quick 3-minute break. So if everyone enjoy the quote and be sure to take a quick break. We'll see you in 3. All right. You will find your way back, please. Find your way back. So that little timer re-kicks, and sometimes can get into a problem. I do want you all to notice right quick. This is the back of one of our cards that we use to promote the show. You are the light when you know the light inside. And there is one of our promotional cards. Thought you might like that. So whenever we go to conferences and things like that, that's what we do. And I don't know if you all noticed, one of the best quotes we've received on this particular broadcast since the beginning, and I'd like to pull up Tara's quote. Tara, I can hug your neck right now. You said exactly what it is that did the same thing for me. I was in the zone after discovering Russell's work, and I spent 3 weeks to do the whole home study course. I could not put it down. It took me 4 months, but I know what you mean. I cried and healed so many wounds in the flash of light instantly.
Beautiful.
All right. So obviously we got a little bit of an issue with the sound there. We do the best we can. Tara, thank you so much for saying that. I found the same thing when I first found it. I could not put it down for months. I mean, I lived and breathed it. In fact, when I came back to John, it was just 4 months later, John, you remember that day when I was like, I can't put this home study course down. It was like something I've been looking for my whole life that I knew, but someone had put it into words for me.
Yes, I remember that. And it's a wonderful thing, when you find that thing, that something that aligns your soul with true knowledge. It's exactly right. And I'm glad that Tara had that experience, because I've been there, and I think all of us have been there. And when you find that, it's so you want to just rejoice.
You do. It was joyful, and it was recharging. And then here we are all these years later. And that's part of why you see the panelists, including Ken, who is not able to be with us, and James behind the background, and Joey, who also works with us. Everyone's got this passion to want people to be able to have that experience that Tara had. And as we're climbing in consciousness, Karen, before we go into this next letter, that's really what people are craving, is a deeper understanding. Would you agree? Karen is on mute. Would you agree? She's coming off mute. Would you agree that you're back on mute? So much. All right. All right. Karen's trying. I'll pass it to her a little bit later. So there's something going on.
I got it. I'm sorry. It's like, on the break, I get automatically muted, and then I think to go back.
We all do. So would you agree that you are watching, even with your magazines, that that more and more people are looking for this kind of experience of understanding?
I think it's a real mixed bag. I know from my magazine, those are the kind of people, because they're willing to go in many different modalities, but more people that are more in different philosophies or religions sometimes are very limited. But my journey's been one of much more broader scope. So when I found the work for me, it's yeah.
Okay. Well, then let's go ahead over here. I wanted to go to the bottom of page 391. So this is when they slow down and they actually write a letter to the students of this university. And they talk about there in that last sentence and that last paragraph, it says this. It says, the one who works knowingly with God works with God's hands together with his or her is one. This also is a demonstration of God awareness. So notice that phrase, God awareness. This is the way inspiration, oops, we just lost it. It just went away. This is the way inspiration comes suddenly. For all inspired conceptions is timeless. Knowledge is a quality of the undivided mind universe in which there is no time. All right. Undivided mind is an important concept here. So I want to slow us down. Jim or John, who wants to go first in describing this undivided mind?
Well, if I may, the last sentence, which you left out, is paramount to what we're trying to explain here. Thoughts of mind, however, take time, for thoughts are divided waves, and waves are synchronized with the universal heartbeat, which creates the idea of time. So we have to remember that you have mind and you have thought. Mind is stillness. Mind is all knowing. But the process of thinking and thought and ideas take time to bring into being. Okay, so we have to remember that. Even though we experience timelessness when we're in that zone, but it does take time for thought to emanate and present itself, to manifest itself.
All right, so make that very real for me on this broadcast that we're doing right now. So we had an idea. Ken and I were coming together, and we had this idea. It was inspired, and then use this very practical experience into that idea you just mentioned.
So the thought and the idea that you came up with, right? So now the thought is born. So the next step in that process is the manifesting of that thought. So remember, there's God's 4.5 swings of the pendulum, and there's your 4.5 swings. God's 4.5 are guaranteed. He already did his by you getting the idea. Now you've got to bring it forward and bring it into being. And it takes time to do that.
It does.
That's what the world is about.
I was facetiously rocking it like a baby, but that is in fact what it felt like. I mean, we all understand the concept of birthing. Interestingly enough, takes 9 months to birth. 9. We keep hearing that number 9. So when you think about birthing a new idea, it does take time.
Dr. Russell spoke about this. I believe it was in The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe, but don't hold me to that. But I believe it was. He said that he received timelessly the knowledge that during his 39-day illumination, it was timeless. It was all at once. But in order to write it down as he was giving it, it took 39 days. Then once he came out of that state and back into the Dr. Russell's self, it took him 7 years to write the Universal One.
Right.
To give it the body that was already complete within him. So that's what anything like that, any idea you get is whole and complete.
Well, and I thought about that the other day, Jim, when I actually said something about how the Divine Iliad, he wrote the Divine Iliad after his illumination. And you said no, during his illumination. But see, what I was thinking is the actual thought part where he had to bring up the book and actually publish it and give it to others. So it is like a 1-2 step there. John?
I want to give our audience something to think about. If anyone has seen the movie Amadeus, which is probably 25 years old now, but when Mozart was commissioned to do the Magic Flute opera, he just kept postponing it. And so the director of the opera comes to him at night to his apartment and he says, "Where is it?" He says, it's just a bunch of scribbling and bibbling. And he says, well, where is it? He says, well, it's already done right here. So it was complete in his mind, but he still had to take that music and all of that and put it on paper. So that sequence. So that's what I'm saying, that an idea can be complete, it can be whole, but it still has to be made manifest.
Yes.
You must give it a body.
Well, and I want to bring up Tara's comment because Tara, I appreciate your vulnerability tonight because you're bringing up some important nuggets. And this is really important because I see this is where a lot of people stumble. That is a great reminder. I think I give up before it manifests. LOL. Oops. And Tara, I think that's generally where I find so many people. I have many, many people who say, I have a book idea. I have this idea. I have that idea. And yet we let ideas come and we let ideas go. And they're not just going to poof themselves. And I find that this idea of when it's given to you, for me, it has been a discipline of capturing the inspiration. So because we receive a lot of inspiration and I've always had this, that's part of what I think the work here inspired me. So is I have loved this idea of creation. And so I teach people when you have an article idea, you get out a piece of paper and you sketch it out and then you bring it to life. I know how to take an idea and actually birth it. I like birthing. I only got to have one child. So maybe this is how I'm birthing everything else. I like birthing ideas. It's a fun process for me. And I was inspired when I actually wrote the book for women that birthing humans was only one way for us to birth new creations. And that's what I think that we miss the boat in teaching in this reality is that we actually are all designed to birth things, to create things. It's just simply different kinds of things. Does that resonate with you all, John?
Well, let's go back to our quote: mediocrity self-inflicted, genius self-bestowed. So I spoke on this on my 2016 lecture at Homecoming, and Ken has mentioned this many times as well, that the average person will have 50 to 70,000 fleeting thoughts a day. All right. So what separates mediocrity and genius is the one that's able to hold that thought, to bring it into
Yes.
being, to manifest it, and do it in a sequence. Sometimes, it's faster than the average person, and so on. But that's the actual separation point, is that some listen or, pay attention to it, and some don't. They just let it go.
I have to tell you, voice memos are my best friend. I would have never been able to write my book. So when I received divine inspiration, I would immediately record a voice memo to myself. And what I found is that no matter what area that happened in my life, I then would be able to go back and then put all of those things together, because it was like a puzzle that the creator was trying to give me, saying, we need you to do this. Can you please capture it? And yet I hear many, many people that are not able to manifest the genius side because they haven't found a way to harness the ideas. So let's take a look at what Bonnie has to say here. Everybody's loving our ideas as we get down here to the last few pages. In the beginning was the Word. The Word manifests itself in so much as it did with Walter Russell, trying to present third and fourth dimension on 1- and 2-dimensional paper for all of us. Wow. Wow. So Bonnie, that's said very well. While I'm trying to manifest a Vibe smart digital whiteboard for our office, I'm also going to someday have a holographic projector. So just know that's coming. I'm going to somehow figure out a holograph projector here for us to be able to do exactly what she was saying, make these things become alive.
Now, does our Bonnie lie over the ocean?
You're on a roll again.
And there you go, John. There we go. All right, let's go ahead down to the bottom of page 391. And there were some things that I highlighted there because we're down to our last 3 or 4 pages of this particular lesson just in time tonight. And I want to go to the one in brackets, if we'll keep scrolling down to 392. So in brackets, John, if you would please read that area in brackets.
Yes. Every man is an inherent genius, and there should be an ever-increasing number of geniuses in the world. You have it in you, and so have your sons, daughters, and friends. The greatest man who ever lived is no greater than you, except that he knew that he was and did something about it.
All right, so I want everybody to place in the chat box right now, I claim my genius. So whether you're doing this now or later, let's go ahead and claim it. So Jim, you're trying to take us somewhere. What are you
trying to show you in the first few pages of the Universal One, Dr. Russell has that quote. I get the right page over here. Has that quote. Do you see it there? In the beginning was the Word.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's right at the beginning of the Universal One.
Talk about a lovely alignment there. Wow. Yes. I absolutely love that. Thank you for bringing that up. So as we continue on this particular page, it says this: the hope for world culture is through the production of more geniuses. So remember, we're not only talking about you, we're talking about your children and your grandchildren. So you have the ability to plant that seed in them right now. And the only way to produce them is to make men aware of their genius. And so down to where the blue brackets are, it says this: by genius. I'm going to go very slow here because this is important. Oh, look at all the people claiming their genius. They're with us. Okay, so by genius, we mean the man who has learned to live life gloriously at the maximum, not just the genius who has expressed himself in the art. Wow. Wow. Learn to live life gloriously. I found that to be such a breath of fresh air. Who talks like that? No one talks like that.
And my cousin John talks like that.
John does talk like that.
He does talk like that. Yeah.
Which is why he was so inspirational to me the very first day that I met him. And so as you scroll down here, it says this. It says, the more you do to unfold your genius, the more you will be enabled to uplift the world to the level you have yourself attained.
Kimberly, can I comment on that, please?
By all means.
I forget who it was earlier in the broadcast who said that they were telling people about the Russells and what they're doing, but to no avail. And that was what I wanted to say to them earlier on, is exactly what the Russells just said here. It's best that you demonstrate the message rather than try to verbalize it and to try to pique someone's interest in doing that, because the spark of genius that lies dormant within them, that is how they will be inspired, is in your doing.
Yes.
Okay. And if it's within them, and if it's their time, and if they're ready, they'll join.
Even the other day, I went to go see a place that someday I could love to have as an East Coast retreat center. And the realtor, both realtors that I met with, they were actually like, "Why are you in Waynesboro?" And I gave them just kind of a 3-minute synopsis. And by the end of it, they were like, "Oh my goodness, that is just so inspiring. I want to know more." And so we keep remembering that inspiration is the greatest gift that one can give another. And I thought it was really neat what was there on the bottom of page 392, as we're going down here, is that right there, right now, 392, up a little bit, James. Okay, it says this. Have you ever realized that if the world consisted only of geniuses, there could be no wars? That is a fact, nevertheless. For genius in man is God awareness. Naturally, as God awareness increases, materiality decreases, and materialists are the ones who make wars. Okay, so this is important, and I need to pause here for a moment, because I was actually with a group recently, and this was a corporate group, and they were talking about some of the uncertainty in the world, and somebody mentioned that somebody was saying, well, they were concerned about upcoming wars. And somebody else actually said, well, wars can be good for business. So I jumped in and I was like, what? We've all thought that, and that's part of what's perpetuated wars all this time. What if we put on a new lens and said, we can find new ways to grow business and grow support and grow what it is that we're trying to do without defaulting to war? War is an old lens, and it's not going to land in the directions that we're going. So to me, this was a glaring reminder of what this lesson was about, because sure enough, I was carrying my unit of the home study course there with me. And so when that came up, I realized that is a lens. And so literally I said to them, I said, we have an old lens that says war is normal and acceptable, and that's just a reality. And I'm saying, no. Let's please just take that lens and rip it up. No more. Because if we're really going to talk about a lens and we want to have a world that's created in a different way, so I literally planted the seed with this particular corporate group. Karen, I know you're jealous. You have heart lens envy. I'll send you a pair. Okay. But this is important, because that's what all of us are doing. Even in normal conversations, we each have a way to inspire others of letting go of these old lenses that we as a descending humanity accepted as normal. You all see where I'm going?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, all right. So Deb says this. She says, it will spark the genius in others. You're totally right. And Bonnie says, uh-oh, I just lost you all.
I'll read it.
Bonnie says, I asked for the opportunity to get on everyone's wavelength to give information they need to attain a higher level of knowledge that they might need. Very well said.
And when you're living an inspired life like that and working to do it every day, the very moment that you walk into a room, you uplift the frequency in the entire room, even for those that are not aware of it.
Yes. I often thought, Jim, it reminds me of that old Michael Jackson video, where there's a video where he walks on the street and everywhere he walks, the sidewalk lights up. I will never forget that. I'll have to bring up that video sometime, but I really do believe that's what happens with a lot of us, is that as our God awareness increases and our light increases, when we're walking through the world, we are actually bringing more and more light. And so
I met an enlightened man. You couldn't miss it. And he was an elderly man who had been teaching natural healing arts and he had developed a system for doing it. And the FBI and other organizations came in and raided his place, destroyed his equipment, and put him in jail. And they threatened to leave him in there indefinitely. He continued doing exactly what he did every day in life. He sat with the prisoners around him and he inspired them to be more than they can be. And he constantly talked to them saying, you're not what you did. You are a God-centered being. You are love and light. He kept preaching this week after week. After several weeks, they threw him out.
Wow. That's a fabulous story.
Yep.
All right. And what happens if any of us are talking to our grandchildren, to our children, to the person who's there in the grocery store line? We can actually spread that kind of inspiration. So I want to go back to page 393. We're down to the last 3 pages, last few minutes before we get to enjoy Karen's visual journey. Have you realized that the geniuses of the world, go back up to the yes. Have you realized that the geniuses of the world are those who spend more time in solitude and aloneness than other men? For in their solitude, they find that ecstasy, which is the greatest bliss that man can know. And John, would you read that next underlined section?
I will. Find time, therefore, to lose your body as much as you can. When you are aware of your body, you can be lonesome, terribly lonesome and dejected. But you never can be lonely if you can find the exaltation and ecstasy, which is your soul. Instead of being lonely, you will rejoice in your aloneness with God. And I can sit here and tell you today, tonight, that I don't know how many years it has been that I have experienced that moment to moment. And when you have that relationship with the Creator, knowing, and you give credence, you have to give credence to the Creator for everything that is, and know that you are part of that. And once you can join, once you can bring those two together, it's a wonderful thing. You can never, ever be alone again.
Right. That's what, and I found that very interesting. If we'll scroll down a little bit there on page 393, where I have the highlighted star on the right. So it says that therein lies the secret of self-discovery. Therein lies the difference between greatness and mediocrity, stability and instability, strength and weakness in man. And if we'll scroll down to that bottom sentence, Jim, would you read that bottom sentence that's highlighted, please?
Life is glorious when it is all that way. And it really is that way when that which is eternal in you makes you forget all else but the eternal in God's universe. The rest of it being mirage, which really cannot touch you when you know it cannot. Can't read on or?
No, I thought that was very important because you see that they have it underlined.
And remember, Jesus made that statement in the Bible. They cannot touch, he said, they cannot touch me until that time comes, until I allow it to happen. People do not yet fully understand what a Christ conscious being is. They are incapable of being harmed. Remember, this man could disappear in the middle of a crowd. He could walk away. He could heal. He could manifest at will. What was he showing us? He was showing us that they could only do harm to him and his body if he allowed it to happen. It was an example for humanity because remember in the garden, must I drink of this? Remember, must I drink of this? And the answer he got back is yes, this will benefit man. This will give man a concept of what they believe has to happen. So he went through it. And many of us, including me, believe that having gone through it, when he resurrected himself, he went off and taught all over the world after that time. So my point is that he is not unique, and he's not a single unique son of Creator. We all are sons and daughters of Creator, and we all can achieve and do those things knowingly. And we all do sacrifice ourselves regularly for the well-being of other people. It's knowing when to stop,
So as we go to the bottom of page 394 here, where I have it highlighted in stars, it says this. It says, eternal man of tomorrow, we're scrolling down, eternal man of tomorrow shall find new paths into a new world of a new kind of life adventure, motivated by love, and by balanced dealings of man with man, that passeth all understanding. And as we go on down to the very last page, it says this is our message to you. Scroll up a little. This is our message to you for now, a message of hope, which comes from seeing visions nearing fulfillment in the race of man, of visions of the saving of the race of man as foretold in this message. This is what we are working for. With your help, we believe that the human race may yet be saved from its own self-destruction. With our love and gratitude to our Father, Mother, for your coming within the radiant aura of his message, we are sincerely yours, Leo and Walter. Any final thoughts? Any final thoughts, John?
Please take note of that. I'll be very brief. Please take note of that, that they're making it very clear to you that we are the ones that will make this new age manifest by knowing that that is happening, not questioning it. And we are the ones that will be inspired by others doing that kind of work. And we are the ones that can inspire others to do that kind of work. So it's something that in my world is happening and will continue to happen.
Kimberly, if I may,
please,
before we see Karen's wonderful video, I was explaining to my Karen the other day, literally the tens of thousands of hours that Jim and his wife Jackie and myself, the hours that Jim and his wife traveled to and from Pennsylvania to Virginia, and to save, literally, and I mean this, to save this message. And it brings me great joy for us to be sitting here and delivering this message to the world as written, as it was intended.
And it's a joy to be able to serve in this capacity, John. And I hope everyone that's listening now and in the future can hear the love from Karen, Jim, John, and myself, and Ken, who is here in spirit as he's recovering from hip surgery there in LA. So please let us know if you have questions. But for right now, it is time for what we do at the end of every single episode is please enjoy this gift of love and genius from our very own Karen. Enjoy the visual journey. Wow. What a lovely, lovely journey, Karen. And this is what you were talking about, that you were so inspired to be able to bring to us.
And all of the other things that we talked about.
Yes, so we have some exciting things coming as you all are placing your things in the chat box. We are working on a visual journal that you can map along. We're working on some quote cards. We've gotten some amazing things percolating that the team is working on, all as a gift of love. So I would like to go to just a few of the comments. So Jean says this. And Jean says, this is a big deal, Jean. Thank you. Kim, after listening to you in our group, she was talking about Facebook Live earlier today, followed by this. I am uplifted and ready to live life gloriously. A very big deal for you, Jean, and I hold you in deep reverence because I know what a journey it has been as you had lost your husband years ago. Let's pull up some of the other comments that everyone's saying. We've got Deb and Margie, some others. So powerful, Karen. Thank you. Margie says, beautiful. And Karen, you continued. So many beautiful comments here. And so this is the time that we offer. If any of you want to ask questions, we don't have to. I feel the love. Thank you all. Tara, we're so glad about that. And one more from Rita here. Linda says, thank you for everything all of you are doing. You all are holding the space for us in the future as well. And Rita says, is there a glossary of terms available somewhere? I think it'd be helpful to be able to easily look up certain terms or concepts such as decentration and the universal heartbeat. That is a fabulous idea, Rita. Yeah. We do not have that yet. So you just gave us the new idea. I know that they have I'm getting ready to show you all, they have a table of contents that comes with a copy of the home study course. But as far as I know, Jim, there is not a specific glossary per se.
No, the only thing that comes close to it, and this is the only one of the books that the university publishes that has it, is there is an index in the back of The Secret of Light, covering everything that's discussed in there. So if you have a thought or idea about light or enlightenment or decentration, you look it up in the index in the back and it'll take you right to the page that explains.
Okay, well, maybe Karen and we can certainly, our team can work on that. So thank you for the idea, Rita. Mm-hmm. So while we're waiting for any questions that you all have, just a few things that I want to remind you of as we are wrapping up here. So let's take a look at what's ahead for November. I know we're going into the holidays, but this time every Sunday night is still a gift to you. So please take a look. We'll be looking right there. You'll see on the screen what we're going to be doing each one of those sessions. But I did want there was more. So I pulled from the table of contents so you could see on this next one. You can take a screenshot right quick. That is what we'll be covering. Unit 6 is a very in-depth unit and very powerful as we're beginning to segue with our friends. And so I want to remind everybody, please, as you are talking with other people, and even if it's people you don't know, I understand that many of you may be taking this journey on your own without friends or family, but there are other people that you're interacting with online. Please share information about the Awaken Your Inner Genius that you'll see on the next page. So you'll see you can go to awakeniourinnergenius.com, that sends them a link to the manual tapped along with the home study course. And then for those of you that end up ordering any posters or additional materials, you can use the code, go back, Awaken10, if you do end up going to philosophy.org. But I want to remind you to go to the YouTube channel, because please notice I listed there all the playlists. You will see a playlist of all the visual journeys that Karen has created to date, including some of the mini ones that she's done. You'll see a collection of Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, 4, and 5. So anyone who is joining us, do not worry if you have not been with us since the beginning. You've got plenty of videos to catch up, and you'll see how we've evolved as we go along. So, James, do we have any, if you will come off mute there, do we have any questions that need to be brought up here? I want to say a thank you to James. James, any of you that follow us on social media, I just wanted to ask while we're listening for any questions. James, if you could just share with everybody briefly about where they can find us on social media and what you have been working on lately. James?
All right. Yes. Hey, everyone. Had to come off mute. Yeah. So we are working on creating some more videos. So the ideas that you share with us through your questions and comments, those are very helpful as we decide what types of content we want to make. We do have a Facebook group now, along with a Reddit group. So one of my goals is to have a place where people can continue the conversation after the show. So if you haven't visited the Facebook group, you can just look up Awaken Your Inner Genius there. Put any questions, ideas, suggestions in that group, because we want to make sure this is as interactive as possible. It's not just a one-way street. It's a conversation. So those are some of the things we're working on right now, along with some of the other things that Kim mentioned as far as like the really cool visual workbook and journal. Which I'm
James,
excited about.
I think you should show off your glasses because I think Kimberly might be jealous.
Okay, yes, I have to put her to shame real quick.
All right, let's go back to the panel there, back to the panel view. So I don't see any other questions. James is going to put us in the holiday spirit as we're coming along.
There we go. All right. A little sprinkle of cheer for you as we move past Halloween.
There you go. So there's the gauntlet's been thrown down. We have fun glasses. What do you all have? All right. So,
I think John's
going to get his glasses. I can tell John's got fancy lights in the back. So let's lay the gauntlet down. So any other questions in the chat box? I'm not able to see it with my glasses up.
Let's see.
He's just being cool.
Oh yeah. He just
All right.
just beat us
So
both.
it's all about the lens through which you see.
All right. Well, if you want to talk about that, I have 3 different pairs. It depends which way I'm whether I'm talking up close, back far, or whether I'm driving.
Jim, you're up. That's why John wore the black shirt tonight. He had that plan.
Yes, shush.
Black shade.
I couldn't see through it.
I can only join Carol. Yeah.
That's
There
a
we go.
lovely way to end our session, because what this home study course does is give you a very different lens to be able to see the world. So
Yes.
a gracious thank you to all of our participants for sending you much love. We're not going to say goodbye. We're going to say until next time. Please read your home study course. Those of you that don't have a copy, click on the link that we'll end up placing in the chat box there. You can go to awakengenius.com, find your way to the home study course. And remember, we're just simply trying to bring up highlights. This is a self-study home study course. There's a reason for it. And so as we go through the rest of it, there's going to be some really, really powerful things unfold. So a thank you to our panelists. A thank you to James and our technical team. We will see you all in the name of love, like Jim's pointing out. Thank you to our 434 subscribers on YouTube. Can't wait till we reach that milestone of 500. Everyone have a wonderful week, and we will see you on Unit 6. Take care, everyone.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Take care, everybody.